I'm gonna try something new. I'm gonna try it on my phone and see how well it works out. We'll see. Maybe better than the laptop. The signal here is not great. I'm gonna see about hooking up an Ethernet cable maybe directly to my laptop. We'll see if I can improve that. And I forgot to ask Eric about that today. I should have talked to him about that, so I can run something out directly from what they have in the office, like I do it at my house. It might help out a little bit, but I am at West Tech and I am dyno testing. In fact, I've got a bunch of things I'm doing. We've got, I'm right in the middle of a big spark plug shootout. So we've got some E3 diamond fire technology spark plugs and some laser, freaking laser beams. We got some laser platinums, and we have your run-of-the-mill, the low-dollar copper core auto lights, and all of those were supplied by the guys. Actually, kind of cool, by semi-sponsorship, I guess, from the guys over at AutoZone. So shout out to the guys at AutoZone. They said, we know what you're doing, and we like your stuff, and we'll supply these plugs. I'm not, doing any AutoZone brands or anything, so it's not like I'm beholden to them. But they did supply spark plugs for the test, which is cool, because some of those spark plugs are fairly expensive. Luckily, West Tech already had the E3 stuff. They had some stuff in stock, and I can use those. But the laser, the freaking laser beam platinum ones, the 4-prong deals, are not cheap. Those are pretty pricey. The other ones would be the ones that I would normally buy, like the auto light stuff, the copper core one. So let me know in the comments. Unfortunately, I'll have to take a look earlier, see if I can look at some of the comments. The screen's pretty small, right? Let's see, I'm gonna move that a little bit. So let me know in the comments, if you guys run any of these. Do you guys run, especially for LS stuff, particularly? I know most guys use the precious metal stuff. They use platinum or iridium, those kinds of things. And what we'll find out is it's primarily, for high mileage stuff, or for, I should say, so that the plug lasts a long time, basically, so they can get a lot of miles out of the spark plug, especially from the OEM stuff. That's why they use the precious metal stuff, and it does last a long time. I mean, some of those things have spark plug change recommendations at 100,000 miles. I mean, think about that. That's ridiculous, especially for anybody that remembers their parents or whatever. If you talk to them about, hey, look, when you had a car, you had a 61 Bel Air wagon or whatever, you might be changing plugs every 10 or 15,000 miles. It would be a short order compared to what's happening now. Most people just treat their motors or their vehicles like toasters. They're just a thing that they go use. It's a utilitarian thing, and they don't give it a second thought. I mean, it looks pretty and stuff, and that's all fine. But it used to be that people actually had to do service on it. I told a story about driving into a gas station and lifting the hood. People looked at me like I was, they're like, what's that guy doing? he must be problematic. He's probably a beatnik. But the cool thing is right now I'm doing more testing on it. So I'm doing all the spark plugs. We've got not only those spark plugs, but I'm also testing indexing spark plug, which is very, very cool. So I figured out a way to get them oriented to the directions that I want. In fact, I just posted something up on Facebook about indexing the plugs, asking people their opinion on where I should aim these spark plugs. Where should the opening of the spark plug be? Should it be aimed toward the intake valve? Should it be aimed toward the exhaust valve? As it turns out, I could do both. So we could find out if there's any gain from going either direction. The interesting thing on that video, and all of these will be coming up after I get home, but on that video, the interesting thing in the start out of all of this is when I put the motor on the dyno, and we've never looked at this before, where are all the plugs when you just bolt the plugs in? Are they all perfectly indexed? Which would require every cylinder head that's ever been made for all of the threads to start at exactly the same spot. And it would also require all of the spark plugs to be machined with the threading starting at exactly the same spot relative to the electrode. So does that really happen as you might imagine? No, it does not. And it did not happen on this motor, and it has not happened on any motor I think that I've ever run on the dyno. I haven't honestly tested every one that I've run on the dyno for that to see if they're all, if any of them are the same. As it turned out, some of them are. Some of them are fairly close. But with all of the spark plugs being in different positions, it required different thicknesses of gaskets and things to get them, and in fact, they used crush washers and stuff to make it happen. But it took different ones to get them in different positions because we had to move them different amounts. But the real thought problem here is that if we put them in and they're in different places anyway, is any of this going to matter? That was my question when all of this started, but something that I wanted to test. So the first test I did, before orienting them at either the intake valve or the exhaust valve, the first test I did was just make them all the same. Let's get them all aimed somewhere. Let's get everybody marching together to the same tune, and let's find out what's happening. So that was the first test, and then I could swing them over to orient them toward the intake valve, and swing them to orient the exhaust valve. I could run all of these different plugs, and in addition to the 3 very different price plugs and different style plugs, and that's the other thing I should notice for the live feed guys. You guys get to hear about it first, and that's that when I started out with this plug test. So I'm running the cheap auto lights, brand new, and I gapped all of them. They were actually already gapped out of the box. They were all gapped at 22, 3. They were all gapped at 45. Almost every one of them exactly the same, all within 1,000. So I thought that was awesome, especially for an inexpensive plug. I would expect that of like when we test an IQ 31 or 27 or something, or the Denso stuff, the Iridium stuff. All of those are gapped, and they're nice. You'd expect that out of a plug that costs $10 or $15 or $20 a piece or whatever they cost. So you would expect that, but you wouldn't expect that out of a $3 plug. But they were all gapped nicely. So I made sure that was the case. But before I tried those plugs and the laser plugs and the E3 Diamond Fire spark plugs, I ran it with the plugs that were already in it. So the plugs that were already in it were a mismatch of plugs that I just had laying around. Some of them, I don't think any of those were factory ones, because I think I went and got a set of NGKs, or more likely, knowing my history, I grabbed a set of used NGKs that were sitting at the bottom of the spark plug bin over here at West Tech, and put those in. But some of them went bad, or some of them got dropped, or I didn't have 8 of them there. And so I have 5 of those, and then I have 2 champion plugs, and then 1 other kind of plug. So they're not all the same plug. They're not all the same heat range. They're not all the same style of plug. So they're just like a junkyard mismatch of stuff. And you put them in, and when they go in, if we take them out, like we took those plugs out and I ran them in the 4.8. So I took those plugs out, just that group of plugs, and ran it in the 4.8. We're fine. And then I take them and put them back in. So they're not coming out and going back in the same cylinders every time. So they're going in, they're getting moved around and mismatched, and yet the motor's repeatable. So that worked out just fine. So then that makes me question all the stuff that I'm doing with all these other plugs. When I go into it, I'm hoping, hey, let's make lots of power. Let's have one of these electrode designs do something and make extra power. The thing about being on the dyno is that, like, after we changed the intake manifold on the LS from the truck manifold, from this thing right here behind me to the fast manifold, which definitely gains power, then you see that kind of thing, you're like, oh, the only thing better than that would be to have a little bit more of that. So can we get that from, I did the oil test also, so we test 0-10 weight versus 20-50, and I wasn't expecting much of a power gain there, but there was. and a commensurate change a dramatic change in oil pressure as well, especially after the thing was hot. So that's going to be a good video as well. When I get off here, I'm starting this late tonight because I got a lot of stuff going on. Actually, truth be told, I was doing stuff on social media. I put up a bunch of reels today on both Facebook and Instagram. So if you don't follow me on Facebook and Instagram, you should, because there's a lot of other cool stuff that goes on there. Things that I don't directly do YouTube videos on. So you should go check that stuff out as well. So I'm on here late, but after this is over, what I'm going to do is switch gears for a little bit and go put the 2.2 liter Dodge motor together as much as I can. There's a bunch of stuff that's missing that still needs to come out from the machine shop, and unfortunately did not show up on Friday. And so I'm limited in what I can do, but I can put the pistons and rods and rings back in it, and then maybe put the head on, I think. We'll have to see. I don't think that the oil pump is there, so and I know the pan's not there, so there's a lot of things that I can't do to button it up. I was hoping to, if everything was here, it would have been assembled and ready to go this weekend, which is disappointing for me. But, you know, that's the way that the world is. So I want to do that tonight. I also am going to run a test on one of the things that a lot of guys that have LS motors don't understand is the factory LS heads are really set up for tapered seat plugs. If you look at a factory LS plug, one that came out of there or a replacement style, it is a tapered seat plug, what's called a tapered seat plug. You can also run a gasketed plug on there and it works just fine. The thing is that when you compare a gasketed plug versus a tapered seat plug, they go into the combustion chamber a different amount. And so right off the bat, you think, hey, look, that's going to change. If it changes nothing else, it's going to change the compression ratio because it's going to, if you have the tip stick in there more, it's going to displace some of the chamber volume. It's going to effectively make the chamber smaller. By a minute amount, albeit, but it is a change. So it's a change that's worth testing. So I want to see if the right plug, the tapered seat plug, does it change power at all compared to a gasketed plug? Assuming, and then also along with that, I'm going to do, I'm on a spark plug tear this weekend. I'm also going to do 2 different extreme heat ranges. So I'll do a stock heat range, which is probably going to be in the plugs that we have like a 16 or a 20, and then go up to a 31, let's say, in Denso speed. And so we'll do a very, very cold plug, something that we would normally use on boosted applications, and a very, very hot plug, and see. And if I have a set, I don't know if we have a set there. I was thinking about doing either a projected tip plug test maybe, or the other thing that I wanted to do is, I talked about doing a side gap test, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to do that. I kind of want to just cut the electrode off and have it jump across. That would be a big gap, but I'd like to see what that does. If anything, if it even fires. One of the benefits the LS motor has with a lot of this testing is that it has a very, very good ignition system. So I think it's not going to show some of the things that we might otherwise be able to see if we had a single coil distributor ignition, and especially if that distributor was an old style points distributor. I think we may be able to see more things happening here if we limited the amount of spark energy that we had in the ignition system, because this will kind of cure a lot of things. In fact, it would be an interesting test on a boosted application to see, you know, how far we could go before we had the spark blowout, you know, under different conditions. What kind of plug gap could we get to? You know, we've run into that problem before on the dyno many times when we're running turbo stuff. Usually it's when we're turning the boost up and not when we're running 7 pounds or 10 pounds or whatever. Although you could get into that problem if you had something besides the LS that had individual powerful coils that we could adjust the dwell on, which we do. We kind of jack that thing up to 4.5 milliseconds. So we have a lot of ignition system. But if you don't have it, and I ran into that on the 292, and so if you don't have it and you need it, then you have to figure out a way to overcome it. Normally what we do on the boosted stuff is just bring the gap way down. But we have tried to run some. I've run, you know, before I've taken the plugs out and changed the plug gap, we've run them with boost and ran into misfire situations where we had to then take them out and go, oh yeah, it doesn't want to run at 45 or 50 gap on the spark plug. We have to bring that down to 19 or 20. And then it cures all the problems, and then all the rest of the testing goes just fine. But it'd be interesting to see steps like that. And I did a test like that long ago with the guys at Kenny Bell when they were testing their boosted spark, which is the same as a boosted pump. They're just changing the supply voltage. And we had raised the gap. We wanted to raise the gap up until the point where we got misfire. But I think we got to 100,000s or something, and the thing was still firing. So again, coil unplug setup, really good system. So it was not the ideal system to be testing that on, but we thought it was going to be an easy deal, but it turned out it was not cooperative. So we'll see what you guys got going on. Hopefully, maybe I can answer a couple of questions here before I'm going to make this a short one tonight because I want to get back on that Dodge and I want at the very least to get the short block done. When I was doing the spark plug test, I have a cylinder head there. As a matter of fact, we can go look at that and see. Hopefully, you know, take a look at that. So you can see I got all my auto lights for those of you wanting. It is a 5245. Yeah. So the test motor's in here. Dean, what's up? Whoa, whoa, whoa. This is my mismatch of plugs. You can see I already got my index lines on them. We got one Bosch, a few NGKs. That's an NGK, that's an NGK, that's an NGK. This one's a champion. This one's a champion. You know how we do it. Be very interesting to hear your take on car timing versus the engine dyno. These are the laser platinums, and then the E3s. I think we put away. Yeah, these were the E3s that we used. They were E364 or whatever. I don't know what. I'm not familiar with the E3 stuff. Somebody asked a question about timing. The difference in timing for the engine dyno and the chassis dyno would have more to do with the temperature that we run things on than anything else. The dyno itself doesn't change the timing. It may change the load a little bit, but if you're at wide open throttle, you're at, you know, you're at 100 kPa anyway. So if what your timing is going to be there while you're accelerating the car, if you're at 100 kPa, it's going to be the same. The only thing that's going to stop it, like I said, is temperature. We run fairly low temperatures on this, although I did do a test while I was here of, you know, move this a little bit. Yeah. Of different temperatures. I ran it from 116 degrees all the way up to 180, and I never varied the timing at all. So that stayed the same. But when Ish and Eric do all the tuning over there on the chassis dyno, they typically run less timing than I do everywhere, less total timing, but the whole curve is down lower because in the car, the engine's going to be running at between 180 and 200 degrees, let's say, depending on what your thermostat is. So normally they would run less timing on that, and then the airfield though is fairly comparable. I tend to run it in the mid 12s. It seems like it works pretty good at. I'm gonna have to. I'm gonna take this out. Change my voice is gonna change, but I have to unplug this thing in because I've been using it for videoing, so I gotta get some power going to it. Power it up. And we're plugging in, and we're plugging in. Oh, here we go. Whoa! Did you see that? It was like the thrill cam, man. What's up? There. Uh-oh. I lost you guys. Sorry. There we go. That should be better. Now we're talking. Whoa, that's like, there we go. That's much better. So I can, if I'm close here, I can maybe see some comments as they scroll by and see what you guys are doing. Try to answer some questions before I get back to it. I'm gonna definitely run some more tests before this thing comes off of the dyno. What I was hoping to do is I wanted to get the 2.2 done so I could get that up and fire it up and see if it's gonna work, and then also do some cool testing because turbo stuff is always very exciting. Gloves on. Oh, that reminds me. I have fuel waiting in the truck. I've got to go pick it up. Dean Burns, what's up? Just hoping to see MSD Iridium plugs. I've never seen those, but we run a lot of the Iridium, the Dentas, and they work really well. I use those on my Bonneville car, probably because they were free. If you run surface gap plugs, you can't change the gap. That's right. And if you run E3 plugs, you can't change the gap either, unless you'd have to hammer on that thing really hard to get it closer to the electrode. T, we tested all kinds of stuff, all kinds of plugs, all kinds of plug related stuff. Can you explain to your public how vacuum advance works? You mean the vacuum advance pod, how the pod works? How the diaphragm inside gets drawn by vacuum and it moves an arm and then that changes the distributor position? Actually, it changes the plate. It advances the timing, which you want to do under cruise because you'll get better fuel mileage. Did you test the frost plugs? No, Mark brought one of those home last night, but he only got one of them. What's the most unique or rare engine you've had your hands on? The Westech has a 01 motor, an LT5 up there that I'd like to run. Copper and silver plugs seem not to be as prone to detonation. Can you run iridium plugs on a high boost application? Like I said, I ran the Denso iridiums on the Bonneville car that went 227, and that wasn't high boost, but those are the plugs that we ran on high boost on the engine dyno. We ran 29 pounds on that, 28 or 29 pounds on the engine dyno, and I was only running about 16 or 17 out of Bonneville though. What's white tritium? Yeah, the T, that's a 4-cam. It's the Lotus motor. Either 385 or 405 horse from back in the day when they had that King of the Hill like 01 deal. 4-cam. Because 4-cam is better than 1-cam. Now, I mean, we're running and go, yeah, it doesn't really do what an LS1 does. I like the coppers, but they don't last as long. That's going to be the discussion basically, is that they work, and copper, as we know, is a very good conductor, so it works very well. But it's soft and it will tend to probably erode much more than the fancy meteorite metals. That's right, meteorite metals. What's a good cam for a Gen 2 LT1? Talk to the guys over at TPIS. Talk to Jim. He's got some good stuff. Can't wait to find one of the new 6.6 gas engines over the wrecking yard. I haven't ever seen any of those. If I ever hear of any of those, they're being sold by some guy online. But there's definitely potential. Have you thought of running tests on a Coyote? Yeah, I ran those way early in the Coyote development, back in late 2010, early 2011. It was a Gen 1, so I did a lot of stuff with that. I've got Coyote stuff up on the channel. Yeah, hit the like button. Yo, what's up? Like it. Liking it. Got my Westech shirt on. Richard, I have an opportunity to get an 85 Dodge Shelby Lancer, supposedly a single blown piston. Could be a money, it could be a money pit and a family project, but it could be both of those. Have you run cams with tight lobe separations on turbos? 106. I don't know if I'd run anything down that far, but it'll work. I mean, it's going to be more responsive actually. The turbo's going to come up sooner, because the 106, this doesn't always happen. But if we speak generally, what guys tend to do is tighten that up so it makes more average power somewhere, down low, in the middle, sometimes all the way through, depending on what you've done with the rest of the valve events. But if it makes more power down low and through the middle, it's going to be more responsive under boost, and so it will work just fine. The thing that tends to go away is idle quality. What's the main cause for a spark plug failure? Turbos running 30 pounds? No, that's not going to hurt a spark plug. If everything's right, it's not going to hurt a spark plug. Dropping them is the #1 cause of failure. Guys using impacts, breaking the porcelain, but dropping them, I'd say, far and away is the worst thing for them. The only time we ever make plugs go bad, and sometimes they come back, is if we're doing something and we overfuel it. So if you fuel foul the plug, sometimes the plug's bad and we just throw it away. Pistons hitting them, and I've been down that road before too. When I put together the DZ302, I think it's when we put airflow research heads on it that it hit the plug and bounced a bunch of stuff around in there. That's when we took it. I ran it and it made good power, but we found the broken plug. I'm like, oh, the cylinder wall's got to be really bad. So we took it apart. The cylinder walls were really bad. And then we had it honed and put it back together and ran it again, and it made the same power. So even with all the grooves and stuff, it just did the same thing. So I was disappointed because I thought it was going to be another 20. I always want it to be another 20 because I read stuff like that online all the time. Oh yeah, that you use that oil or that spark plug or that air filter or whatever. That's good for 15 or 20. People don't realize how hard it is to get 15 or 20 if you're real particular about your test method. I've had a piece of piston break. Like I said, hitting the piston. If the spark plug hits the piston, that's not good. That's one of the reasons that we machine the piston. And by machine, I mean we take a Dremel to it. What's the most power? The most power I've tested, it was one of the big bang motors. That made 1543. I've been here doing the dyno when Mahovitz is running stuff, and it was a lot more than that, but that wasn't my motor. He dropped a head and broke the head? I've never seen that happen. Make sure I go to live chat. I'm not sure how to do that on the not sure I do that on my phone. Let's see, maybe this will do it. Let's see. There we go, live chat. All messages, there we go. Welcome to live chat. Boom, just like that, I'm on live chat. Around too much timing, that'll do it. Yep, I'm down at West Tech. What is most reliable horsepower for a daily? With boost, it can be a lot. Is braking oil safe to use with catalytic converters? I don't know what's in it. Does it have a lot of zinc in it? A lot of times that's not good. And honestly, if you have a roller cam, if you have a roller cam engine that you're braking in, you don't even need braking oil. Just use oil. If you have a flat tappet, then I would worry about the zinc stuff. Most of the flat tappet stuff is, well, I'd like to say that most of the flat tappet stuff is pre-zinc or pre-catalytic converter, but it's not. Yeah, I don't think I could drop a cast iron head on top of an axe and drop it straight down and have it break in half. Yeah, concrete floor, that's not good. I'd just be worried about dinging an edge or something and then have to have it resurfaced. That would be bad. I'd rather drop it on the floor, quite honestly, than drop it on my foot. Does boost ever increase MPG? Not normally, because normally when you're under boost, you're also in enrichment. Normally when we run boost, we run a richer air fuel mixture, which would tend to use more fuel. And if you are in boost, you're also making more power, which also uses more fuel. So not only are you richer, but you're making more power, and so you're using more. If a turbo is good for 700, would running it at 500 make it be less efficient? No, not necessarily. It actually might be more efficient depending on where it is on the island, on the map. I was going to re-ring and put new bearings on my motor with having 6,000 pistons to piston wall clearance on a Gen 5. Is a factory cast piston? That's going to be noisy. If it's a forged piston, then that would be fine. My twin turbo 5.3, the front of the motor reads hotter than the rear with a temp gun. Are you just doing that on the block or the head? Where are you taking that number from? Or do you actually have gauges there? Yeah, if it's a factory piston, if it's a a cast piston or a hypereutectic, it's not gonna have a lot of growth. Something about 112 octane race gas. I don't know what that was. Didn't get it read quick enough. Yes, we run valve covers. I don't know what the question is. We can make some runs, or a run. I got to warm it up, but we can do that. So I don't know if I can. Let's see if I can do a poll here with this. Let's cancel mute microphone. No, I don't have. Is leaded gas bad for injectors? No, leaded gas is fine. Leaded gas is bad for catalytic converters though, and O2 sensors. So that's a magic eraser. No, yeah, the leaded fuel is fine. Are you using LSX coil packs? I'm using stock LS3 coil packs. Trying to get my dad to buy a chassis dyno. I want to test things, I know. Oh, or more good news today. I talked to Ben, and I'm sure Brian was there over at the car farm, and Ben took the Omni out because he worked on the clutch arm and finally got it so that it wasn't too tight, so it wasn't basically holding the clutch back. And so he went out and drove it, and the clutch was holding when he was doing roll-ons in gears. So I have a new clutch coming for it anyway, and they're going to put that in, but it was a good, successful day. And he said it was 35 degrees out there, so you know the turbo was loving that. Turbos love the cold air. Richard, do you prime systems on LS systems? Yes, I do. What we do on the engine dyno is we will put the motor all together, we will put it on the dyno, we will keep the plugs out of it, we will put oil in it, we put oil in it, and put oil in the filter and put that on, and then we cap all of the every leak that would be coming out of the crankcase, and then we pressurize it with the air nozzle until we see a pound or two of oil pressure. And then we will use the dyno starter, it actually has two, with no plugs in, and spin the motor over. And then obviously when we put the oil pump on, we also put oil in there so that it grabs. But by doing that, we're pressurizing the crankcase, pushing oil up into the pickup and into the pump, basically into the motor. And then when we do that and push the crank button, it grabs the oil immediately. Immediately-ish. Marty, is your E85-ish, whatever, could be E50 or whatever, are you running near the limit of where that swing would be? I don't even measure it when we run the stuff here. I don't even care what it is. We know that it has enough cooling and enough octane to do what we're doing. A friend of mine that ran leaded fuel would clean the O2 sensors. Yeah, you can try doing that, and you could try to run unleaded fuel back through it and see if that helps it. But what we find on the dyno is that it just shortens the life of the O2 sensors. A lot of diesel oils have more zinc, that's true. They have different ratings for diesel stuff. Diesel oil, let's see if I can. I'm see if I can use my chair, my stool. These are the fancy engine mixer stools. So I can pretend like I'm important. I want to ask one more question. Will nitrous oxide make less power with colder ambient air? I don't think so, because your motor is going to make more power with colder ambient air. So you're going to be starting higher, and then you should be making more power. Every time I've tried to clean them, yeah, we don't do that. We just run them. And I haven't run leaded fuel on anything in a really, really long time. You heard that the zinc in diesel oils is different? It's a different kind of zinc? Is it zinc 115? That's right. Bob Lazar reference. Any word on the visor head? No, the last time I talked to David, which was a few days ago, maybe a week now, he said that the head was done, that they were just going to do a valve job. Turboing a 350. I've never done a big bang on a turbo 350 on a small block. But Gail Banks has been doing turbo stuff on small blocks for a really, really long time. Yeah, that's a good idea. I think it was Marty. A flex fuel sensor is a really good idea, and more for drivability than power. I have to say, I do like the tuning. I'm using that Holley. We're using a Holley HP on this. It's really nice though. It's so fast and easy to get everything right. In fact, on all of the, a lot of guys that are talking about tuning are asking about changing the timing curve and that kind of stuff. And honestly, When we change, like for instance, here's a good example. So we ran this truck intake manifold, and then we ran the fast intake manifold. So do you have to tune for each one of those? Yes and no. You don't have to change the timing curve at all. The timing requirements for that don't change with that intake manifold. The air fuel will, the fueling needs will change, because if a motor, if you make a change to it, like put the fast intake manifold on it, and it wants to make more power, because I'm not running it in closed loop, I'm running it in open loop. If you just run it and it's making more power, or it wants to make more power, it will go lean. So you have to add fuel, because it's supplying extra air, so you have to have more fuel with it. So that tuning part of it is necessary, but I did nothing to the timing curve. It still wants 29 degrees there. Any news on the Trophy 4-cylinder? Yeah, I can find out from Dave. The last I talked to him, he had ordered rings for it, so the machining I think is done. So it should be getting ready to go back. The only thing I don't know about is I think he sent the cam out to have it reground to the guys in Oregon, and so hopefully that will be done. One of the downsides to switching to E85 is your fuel system definitely needs to be upgraded. Not just for the corrosiveness or potential corrosiveness of that kind of fuel, but because of you have to now flow 25 or 30% more fuel to make the same amount of power. So it's very important that you have big injectors and a big pump. Quite possibly a big bang tonight. It's going to be really hard to do on an NA motor. Could a high compression 4.8 have more bottom end than a stock 5.3? I need to go back and look and see. It's been a while since I looked at the stock ones to see what the torque difference was. I don't know how much compression I could calculate it, how much compression we'd have to change to make that happen. Do you prefer the Holley Terminator X or the HP? I have more experience with the HP. Recently, I've run the Terminator X, and for me, it does exactly the same thing. I don't do tuning, so I'm only doing like 5 or 10% of what that thing's capable of. More fuel, more timing, less timing. That's really basically it. I'm still waiting for the 3800 Big Bang. I know, me too. I don't have heads for that. They're not back. You should put a valve spring in there, and the valve spring is not what's going to make the thing run a lot of RPM. You need a lot more than that to go a lot of RPM. And an RPM thing is not a big bang. Yep, up arrow, down arrow, that's it. I didn't understand what the benchmark comment was. I maybe didn't see something that happened before that. Did you get the 4.8 running decent? Yeah, the 4.8 runs good. I mean, I already did a bunch of testing with it already. Turbo Monza does still have the heads, yep. Could you explain a wide open throttle switch? Yeah, you're just pressing a little micro switch. Usually the way that people used to do it back in the day, and what it was most common, was it would be on the throttle linkage. And so when you'd go to full throttle, it would just click, it literally would click an arm that would then push a button, and that would send the voltage that you needed to make the system engage, to open the solenoids, and then the nitrous would activate and you would go. When you come off the throttle, then it comes off the lever and the switch light comes back up. It's a momentary switch, so it's only active, it only engages when you push the arm down. As soon as you release it, it's got a little spring on it, pushes it back up. It's not like a light switch where you turn it on and then it's just on all the time. That would not be good for a nitrous setup. For a new H2 valve, what pump and filter? I don't have pump and filter recommendations because that's specific for that application. We have enough fuel pump on this and filter and stuff on the engine dyno that they just have a gigantic aero motive on here. Richard, would you do an RPM Big Bang? Yeah, but that's not a Big Bang thing. That's not what it is. Big Bang is very specific. So you just want to run RPM. I've run to 8,000 before. But I think lots of racers are doing that. I mean, we run to 7,000 all the time with just junkyard motors. This one's going. This one has, since I've been down here, this one has, I don't know, 85 poles on it already. I think it's only 6,600 right now. But it will run to 7 without any problem. It's just not making power out there. I mean, it's been high enough that the rod bolts or something give out. I don't think that that's what's going to break on it. I think it's going to be valve train. I don't know, maybe something could. I would be much less worried about the stock bottom end stuff, because I already talked to Brian about that, and when I was back there last time, they had a 5.3, and I said, can you put my 220 heads on it and a BTR intake manifold and one of your big cams that fits in a stock piston valve connector run to 8,000? They did, and it went to 8,000 without any problem, and the motor's still alive. So it will definitely do that. But the thing about going RPM is not, if you're looking at the rod or the rod bolt or the crank or the piston or whatever breaking, that's not your hurdle. Your hurdle is valve train. You have to get the valve train right. First of all, to get it to make power there. And with a stock bottom end, that's going to be hard, because having enough camshaft with a stock bottom end to have them make power, maybe a 4.8 would be okay. To have it make power at 8,000 would be a difficult thing to do, because you're limited in the mid 230s with intake duration. So you're just not going to have a lot of RPM. You could combine that with a really short runner manifold, I guess, and do it. And it will rev up there. It's just not going to be making power up there. How high did you have the 4.8 up to that you saw 600 horsepower? A 600 horsepower 4.8 would have been with boost. I've never done an NA one that made anywhere near that. A 600 horsepower NA 4.8 would be pretty sporty. It'd be really expensive. It'd be all this stuff. And it wouldn't be a stock bottom end. I think the most I've ever done on a 4.8 with a stock bottom end is 475 or something. Well, if you want to just see how high it spins, you just go put it on a Spintron. I mean, that's fairly easy. Make people stop worrying about piston speed. I don't think they're concerned about piston speed, because they get more talking about that when they're talking about strokers and rod ratios and other kinds of things. And you in here deburring? What are we deburring? The block? What are you doing? A little bit of boost, a GT40. Well, a centrifugal blower would be a better thing to get it to RPM. As we're talking about valve train, is there a valve train stability calculator in terms of spring rate? No, because spring rate spring rate can help with RPM, but it can also hurt valve train stability. The real key is the cam design. You're going to need valve spring for RPM, but that alone won't do it. Sometimes adding spring rate actually makes the situation worse. So there's spring rate, there's spring frequency, there's load design, there's lots of very critical stuff, which is why people have really expensive Spintron machines, to find out how all of that is working. Deburred my 295 oil pump. The oil pump porting is pretty common for LS stuff. Valve train stability is voodoo. It is a real science. I mean, it makes it a lot easier if you have a Spintron and you can test a lot of things and go, hey, look, when we put 1.8 rockers on here, this thing's terrible. QJet on LS, yeah. I should have had the guys. Brule was running on Friday, was running an LS that was carbureted. I should have had them put in fact, he ran, I think that they may have run, the customer may have come in, I think, with an Edelbrock carburetor, which worked really well. Yeah, the guys at Free are really good. They do. I like their valve train stuff. We use that on the Honda and for Bonneville. In fact, I'm talking to one of the other engine builders. In fact, the guy that ran the carbureted motor, the LS, I was talking to him about cutting down. You guys might know in the video, out there in the video world. Let me know in the comments. What I want to do is take a set of LS3 heads and turn down the intake valve to as small as I can while retaining the stock valve seat. So Brian Tooley told me that as long as you keep the outside valve diameter 10 to 11% bigger than the valve seat, then you'll be okay. So I haven't done any measurements yet because I don't have an LS3 head to see what that is. But he's turned those LS3, the hollow stem ones, which are very, very light, he's turned those down quite a bit on other applications. Use them on cathedral port heads. An air cleaner flip. I do so want to do that. I want to run something so I can do an air cleaner flip. I probably will do that when I bring the Pontiac 350 down. That seems like the ideal thing because it has I think it has a quadrajet on it already. Because if you're going to do the air cleaner flip, you got to do it with a quadrajet. Riverside Racecraft. I didn't see your previous comment. If that was the one about Brian Tooley, it scrolled by too fast. What would the purpose of turning the valves down? I want a smaller valve because we want to run it on a small bore motor. I am doing a Pontiac V8. I already have a Pontiac 350, and I have stuff to put together another Pontiac. Somebody had a question about calling to schedule stuff. Did you leave a message? Because they normally return all the calls. You guys let me know, how is the audio quality? Is it okay, or is it in the video quality? Is it okay? Is this better on the phone? Cool. Minor echo. Well, now that I have the charging thing in it, I don't have my audio equipment. I don't have my mic plugged into it. Oh, so Riverside, he got mad at you for wanting to go up in RPM? It's better now. The beginning was not good. Okay, maybe it didn't like that. Maybe it didn't like that mic. Now it's using the phone mic. I like the other one though. All right, it is live right now. It's not Top Chat. I was able to find that. Yeah, the dyno cell has much more echo inside there if I'm videoing there, which I did a lot. But it's part of the deal because I'm in there swapping plugs and stuff. That poor motor, like I said, it's got 85 pulls on it already. Best fuel injection manifold for a small block Chevy. I don't know. I mean, I would still tend to ask what you're doing with it. Do they have a whole bunch of EFI manifolds to choose from? You could use TunePort stuff. You could use mini RAM stuff if you want to run RPM. They have, I'm sure, EFI Victor Jr. kind of things. The motor I'm using for the testing is a 5.3 L33. Oh, aluminium. I can tell you it did not like that 2050 oil. Burns, a tool steel cap. I thought that's what they would tell you. I mean, on all of the titanium valves I've run, we always have lash caps on them. I think that I thought that the LS7 heads when I did them way back, I thought that those came with lash caps. Oh, you want to see a dyno pull? Getaway. We always run stock rockers on the TrickFlow 205 heads. 11 grams seems like a lot. Been turning my LQ9 to the moon. Some good springs. Yeah. Sometimes when we don't know, if we don't look, we don't keep our eyes closed, only good things happen. And by the moon, do you mean 8,000, 8,500, 7,000, 6,800? And you could have hit upon a good combination that works good together. The oil that I ran so far in the 5.3 is whatever was on sale at AutoZone. Again, thanks, shout out to AutoZone, although I bought the oil. It was some kind of, I think it was 1030 that I got there, so I started out with that. I ran 0-10 weight synthetic, I ran 20-50 synthetic, and now I think it has 530 synthetic in it. And it's been just hammered on mercilessly. Walmart sells oil cheaper than that. I think I bought 5 quarts for $23. You're spinning the LS3 8800. Does that have the stock lightweight valves in it? The hollow stem? I did not go to PRI. I just want to have the option to be able to cut the valve diameter down so that it could fit in the small bore if that will help it. If you change the ARP rod bolts, I would definitely check the I would definitely check the big end, and I would definitely check the you probably will change the rod bearing clearance. I ran best on 530. 530 is what they recommend for it, so that's what I normally run. Sometimes I run 1040 or whatever's on sale. Sometimes you run straight 30 in it. Idle oil pressure. Yeah, I'm not on the, for what I'm doing on the engine dyno, I'm not nearly as concerned about idle oil pressure as much as I am in my truck. I am. Good parts in the heads, Jessel, rev to 8500. Jessel stuff is good. The nice thing about the factory LS stuff is the factory rockers are really good and they're very light. And if you like those LS3 valves that he was talking about, those are very, very light, and that helps. And then if you have your spring set up so that it's 20 or 30 from coil bind, and then you, hopefully Brian did some work on the Spintron to make sure that the cam is right and stuff, which I'm sure he's done. I would point out you almost never need to swap rod bolts on a stock bottom end. I don't ever do that. We haven't done it on any of them that I've run. I might be thinking about that if I was running lots of RPM, maybe. But otherwise, I've never put rod bolts on any LS that we've ever run. The exception is that if we are putting a different rotating assembly in there and it came with some sort of forged rod, but not any of the stock stuff. I don't do that, and I don't put main studs or main bolts in it either. I use the factory stuff. You upgrade to a high pressure pump. I did. When we put 2050 in it, it had all the oil pressure you could possibly want. So get the Honda Accord piece and not the Tesla piece. Did they source it from Honda and then overcharge for it? This valve shredding, the smaller valve. Well, on the LS3 head on the small bore motor, I'm less worried about valve shrouding than I am about valve hitting. The head won't go on an LS3 head's not going to go on I mean, it'll bolt on on a 4.8 or a 5.37 bore, the valve is going to come down. It's going to hit the side of the bore. So I'm hoping we can mitigate some of that with a smaller. I just need to check and see how far the overhang is. Well, Burns, it would make sense that they source those from people that are already making them and not make something specific. And if it's a Honda piece, they're do you reuse the torque yield bolts? I reuse all of the stuff in the bottom end. All the factory rod bolts, the factory main bolts, all of that stuff is reused on the big bang motors. On any motor that I have in here that I've run, that's all reused. I don't tend to do that on the head bolts, although I have. If I'm running boost, I tend to put ARP stuff in it. But just not on the bottom end stuff. Da, 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 da. Do you torque plate LS blocks or still machines who say it's useless when I drop my blocks off with my personal torque plates? I actually had one made for my Honda stuff, for my Bonneville stuff too. I think I still have it. I think Mahovitz made that for me, and I think that I still have it. I don't have personally have a torque plate for the LS stuff. I don't know if the machinist that has done stuff for me has that or not. Fascist, I don't know. I haven't mocked that up yet. I don't know if the exhaust valve hits. I'm thinking it's only going to be the intake, but I'm not sure. Rear mount turbo. I always run studs. I prefer studs. I like them, and especially on aluminum block, I prefer those. Because normally when I have these motors, I take the heads on and off a lot. So it's much better with studs. And those are studlier. And the thing that's nice, well, I mean, potentially nice about the LS3 on a small bore deal is that head flows enough to support my, 200 more horsepower than that motor's going to make, or certainly 100. I don't have a personal favorite engine. I like them all. Whatever the next one is that I get to test, like I'm really excited about putting the Dodge back together, which I'm going to leave in about 2 minutes. I like the head studs because the threads for the studs stay in the block, and that stays down there. You're not bringing it in and out a bunch of times and re-stressing it. It would be interesting to see a video on a torque plate machine block. There's not going to be any difference there, not in these junkyard motors. Take 2.8 Idel engines, 1 iron and 1 aluminum. Which one makes more power? If you were to test an iron LS motor and an aluminum LS motor, I would be surprised if there's any difference. I haven't done the big block yet. For a cam 6-liter sub 1,000 horsepower. S475 is good. An S480 might be better for a 6-liter, but if you're staying below 1,000 horsepower, that will work fine. 3/4 race cam, yeah. Trunnion upgrades, I think, are a good idea, mostly because you have really, really high mileage rockers on these junkyard motors. somebody asked a question about the Speedmaster heads. On the big block stuff, I don't know. I don't know if that's a good choice. I think I would look at other ones. Big bang test on a big block is going to be a sad day. Why will it be sad? Depending on the aluminum, the iron block will hold out better. With the exception of I think that the 5.3 aluminum blocks will make as much as the iron blocks do. But the other aluminum blocks will not. An LS1, LS2, LS3, at least I don't think so. Having never done that. The aluminum 5.3s hold boost just fine. People have run way more boost than I have on the aluminum ones. $8.1 headsets are money. Yeah, but they're good though. I watched an iron block make 40 more horsepower on a 1200 horsepower combo because, see, I just, maybe on an old school small block where the aluminum is moving around a lot or something, but I just, every production motor is, they all seem to want to go with aluminum. Not everyone. Obviously the iron LS blocks are not. I know they say the same thing about iron heads. Oh, iron heads will make more power because they don't dissipate heat, they don't lose compression. I have yet to see that. I haven't ever run any of the Indy Chrysler heads. I think they have here, maybe Dulcich or some of those guys. Maybe Bob. What the heck is the Dodge guy's name? There's not going to be any accidental big bang. It's a naturally aspirated motor. It's already run 85 pulls, so I think it's probably fine. It just keeps going and going and going. One more minute. So that's whatever that is. That's half of whatever I said before. Gary, yeah, there's lots of stuff online about how to use an HP tuners. I don't use those, so I'm not the guy to ask about that. So Neil, you like the Bosch O2 sensors? AFR has a Hemi head. Yeah, I don't know if it's out yet, but it probably might be. The iron versus aluminum head thing, Freiberger, they've done it a bunch of times. I already know that the aluminum 5.3s are capable of everything that the iron block is, because you get to a point where the main cap movement becomes the problem and not the strength of the block. And that's in both of the blocks. The guys that are out there drag racing it, Jonathan, whatever his name is I can't remember his name now, but he runs aluminum blocks on the 5.3s, and they're making a bajillion horsepower. So they had theirs. It's already been proven. There's plenty of strength in those. Not very many people I know run LS1 or LS2 or LS3 blocks. So Go Rope Garage is a good source for tuning. Yep. What's the update on the 3800 Series 2 engine? There isn't one. It's still sitting over there. Aluminum LC9 or the L33 that I have. There are a few variants of that. What are the problems with the big block Speedmaster heads? The valve train, valve seats. I wouldn't use the valves or the springs or any of that stuff. I'm not confident about the metallurgy. The other problem that the big block Speedmaster heads had is the if you look at the mounting boss for the rockers, it's not going to be a problem, I don't think, with mild cam application, but the mounting boss is not nearly thick enough for putting the rocker stud into, and spring rate will tear that thing out, I'm sure. So all that is stuff to think about. There are probably other low dollar versions that would work. Other castings like that. I think Andy has some low dollar castings that he redoes. I can't remember who they are right now. But I think he buys them bare and then finishes them with the valve train stuff of his choice. Richard, have you done anything on the Big Bang 6-liter? No, that thing's been sitting for years now. That motor, that particular one will never get that done to it again. If I did another Big Bang on a 6-liter, it would be a different one. And the next one that I think that I would want to do would be a 5.3. Yeah, Flowtech has them. Skip White probably has big block heads. I think Airflow Research has Enforcer big block heads, I think. There are a few of them out there. Somebody asked the last question for tonight, and that was why are people preheating the blocks when they hone them? I think that they want to hone them and have the honing be true at the running temperature is my guess. I would be curious to see a measurement when they do that, but again, you'd have to do this with 2 blocks, and so what would the variation be just because of that? But I'd like to see what the readout would be after they did it each way. What the change in bore would be after you were done, after they were both cold, and then after they were both hot. That would be interesting to see if there is a variation. Big Bang 460 will be the biggest power of them all. The Hunter Turbo Monza. I'm sure he's around. I'm not that concerned with it. I just would like to get it back so I can get it done. You know, I want to get that done and cross that off my list. And I have the cam for it and the springs, and I already have the intake for it. So really, the heads are what I need. Russell, your Turbo Monza. We'll get the heads done. Send them. 572 Metro. There you go. Still going to use the 3800 intake. I don't know what you mean by horrid. I think you spelled awesome incorrectly because it's just nothing but awesome. Okay, guys, I gotta get going. Thank you all for showing up, and I will see you guys all tomorrow. Bam, 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 bam.